What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 281 of Hashtag AskGSM here today for Wednesday, April 17th, 2019. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Of course, a day after I recorded last week's episode, I was doing totally fine. I think my voice was okay, despite coming back from WrestleMania weekend on Tuesday of last week. I was doing all right. 2 days after getting back home, I got sick from one of my family members, so I'm still recovering. It's been about 5-6 days now. I'm still super congested, but it was way worse over the weekend. Thankfully, I didn't go anywhere, but it was pretty bad. I was really not nauseous, but achy. I just didn't want to do anything, and I still have had a lot, and still have a lot to catch up on from what I missed over WrestleMania weekend a week and a half ago. That's how much work I had to get done, and how much work I still have to do from WrestleMania weekend, and of course everything else that's happened since then. So, just a brief warning here, if my voice does not sound great here on today's show, that's why I'm hoping to shake it by hopefully early next week before Avengers Endgames come out. I have tickets for that show on Thursday night of next week, 10:45. It's going to be awesome, so I'm looking forward to that. But this is Hashtag AskGSM. If you guys want to send in questions to the show, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So first question here comes from Elena the Y from YouTube. Their question was, so are you ready for more of the Viking experience? Good God. I can't say that I am. Now, I am a War Raiders fan. Not everyone is. I know RJ's not. I like the War Raiders. They're not my favorite tag team, but I like the War Raiders. I like them as War Machine over in Ring of Honor, New Japan, whatever. I like them in NXT. It was an act that worked. Now, I wasn't super high on the name being changed from the Indies to NXT. It went from War Machine to War Raiders, but it made sense. War Machine, I don't know if you can even get the rights to the name, because it's, a song, and it's synonymous with a lot of things. So I understood the fact they didn't call them War Machine. War Raiders was fine. War Raiders was a fine, substitute for the War Machine tag team name. The Viking experience is so far removed from what the War Raiders was. I'm not even sure why they even bothered to call them War Raiders in the first place. Now, I know Triple H is a better mind for the business, at this point anyway, in my opinion, than Vince does, which is why he kind of had a much better subtle name for the Viking tag team than the fucking Viking experience, which shoves it down your throat that, hey, these guys are Vikings, you should boo them. They're from the fucking 1400s, whatever fucking century the Vikings were a part of. My history is not great. That was not my strong suit back in school, many, many years ago. But anyway, the Viking experience is an absolutely atrocious name. I don't really know what more to say about it than what's already been said, but it's a pretty terrible name. Not only does the name suck, their new names are terrible too. I understand changing the name from War to something else, because this has not been officially reported, but I think actually maybe a member of the War Raiders of the Viking experience, whatever. I forgot if it was Eric or Igor or Ivor, whatever the fuck their names are now. Someone had said, Alexis told me that someone had said on Instagram, one of the two, that the reason the name was changed was because of the USA Network. And maybe this was in the comments section, and not they themselves said this in the post. I don't know what she meant by this. That USA Network changed the name because they're not too high on the idea of the name of the word war being in the tag team name, which I think is stupid. First of all, they're still calling Ember Moon the War Goddess, and they have since she was called up from NXT. So I don't really know what that has to do with anything, the whole war thing. It's not like they're calling them, fucking, I don't know. The word war in a tag team doesn't really, I don't know why that would be so bothersome. I really don't. I don't get it. If there was something about guns, the Bullet Club, that sounds, with all the whole school shooting, I think the Bullet Club name is fine. Obviously, the stable's been around now for so long, you're not going to change it. But I could see, excuse me, if WWE, let's say, bought the rights to the Bullet Club, I don't think they would call it Bullet Club, just because, Vince is very very sensitive when it comes to stuff like that. Maybe not Vince, but like these networks with like stuff that like that. The whole Bullet Club thing with, all the shootings that happen nowadays. I get it. But it's not anything like that. War is war. It's fucking professional wrestling. You have a match called War Games. Now, granted, it's an NXT, which is probably part of the reason we'll never see it on the main roster. But I just think that's so incredibly stupid. I really do. And if you're not going to call them War Raiders, then call them something else. Call them something different. Why the Viking Experience? I think there's a good chance the name changes. Maybe not. I mean, the Titantron said the Viking Experience, and they seem pretty sold on the Viking Experience. So I'm not sure if that's ever really going to change. But I think it's a pretty bad name. Ivor and Eric are also awful. Again, if they wanted to change the name of the tag team to something whatever, War Raiders I thought was perfectly fine. The Viking Experience sucks. They can work on that name. But what was wrong with Hanson and Rowe? That's why I think this was not a USA Network call. Because if it was, why would you change their names from Hanson and Rowe, which are perfectly fine, to Ivor and Eric? I'm going to shove it down your throats that these guys are Vikings, and then go ahead and turn them heel, which there was no reason to do anyway. They bring people up as heels that were baby faces in NXT. They bring people up from NXT that were baby heels there, but baby faces are now on the main roster, i.e. Bobby Roode. I don't know why they do that type of stuff, but it makes very little sense. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the name will blow over eventually. The fact the name sucks. I mean, War Raiders Viking Experience, it's really all a matter of how they book them. Their debut was strong. They beat the Raw Tag Team Champions. Granted, it's not an incredible feat considering the Tag Team Champions are Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins at the moment, but they picked up a big win on Raw. It was a good match. They're very good in the ring. Their intensity speaks for themselves. So it's not the end of the world. It's close to it because the name can really make a big difference. But yeah, I got a lot of people talking during Raw on Monday, and rightfully so because the name is terrible. So we'll see how it shakes out. I could see them tweaking the name. Ivor and Eric I see sticking. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but I'm not a fan to say the least. Joe M. from YouTube, he's got a few questions here. First one being, and I like this question a lot. I know this may be a very loaded question, since they've all definitely had a load of ups and downs during their careers, but if you were to rate all the main roster careers of the 4 horsewomen, what score would you give each of them out of 10? Again, I like this question a lot. It is a very loaded question. I could spend an entire episode on this, because there's a lot to unpack from all 4 of their careers in WWE. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down here. I know she's not probably the least liked person of the 4, but Charlotte has got to be ahead of everyone else. Charlotte, of the 4, has been booked near perfectly since she showed up from NXT. Almost immediately out of the get-go, she had a great debut, won the Divas Championship soon after, held that belt till WrestleMania. That same night became the inaugural WWE Women's Champion. Forgetting all about the women's title from 10 years ago, but whatever. Excuse me. So she became women's champion. She held that belt for the better part of that year. I can't remember all the times she lost it and won it back, but that happened a bunch of times. She main evented a pay-per-view with Sasha Banks. They had a string of great matches that year. But it didn't end there for Charlotte, because going into 2017, she didn't hold the belt. She went to SmackDown to turn face for some reason. But over there, she won the SmackDown Women's Championship. She lost it, won it back again in 2018. She had more great matches with Asuka and with many other people. With Natalya, they had a couple good matches over on that brand as well. She main evented WrestleMania just recently, became a 8-time women's champion on the SmackDown on a few SmackDowns before WrestleMania. So Charlotte, she had a great match with Ronda Rousey back at Survivor Series. I got to give her a 9. And that may seem a little high, but when you consider all the stuff she's already accomplished in 4 years on the main roster, it's pretty amazing. More so than any other women in WWE history. And Trish was great, but Flair has had, in my opinion, better matches on the whole. Maybe not better moments. That's debatable, but I do think Charlotte on the whole has had better matches than Trish did in her 6-7 year run with WWE, which Trish's matches were great, especially by those standards back in the early 2000s when all we got was bras and panties matches. Charlotte, I do think, is a much better athlete on the whole than Trish. We're not comparing Trish and Charlotte here. I'm just saying that Charlotte's run on the main roster is pretty incredible when you really think about it. Now, not everyone's a Charlotte fan. You can argue, oh, her dad got her handed everything, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the reason may be, which I don't buy for a second, but whatever. Whatever the reason may be, she's been incredibly successful and has almost always been a staple of either the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship pictures. Save for like a brief period in like the middle of 2017 where she wasn't on TV. I think that was when Ric Flair got sick. But even then, they really weren't doing much with her. But aside from that, though, she has always been at the forefront of the title picture on both Raw and SmackDown, and rightfully so, because she's great. The only reason I don't give her a 10, it's not like her main roster run has been perfect by any means. Like when they turned her face a few years ago for about a year or two, why? Like that seemed pretty pointless. When they turned her face when she came to SmackDown, she is not a good face. She showed that when she first got called up in 2015. Being a heel is obviously her strong suit. She was a pretty weak face there for a while, but aside from that, though, she's had a great main roster run. Right behind her, I would put Becky Lynch. I think Becky Lynch has had a great main roster run, all things considered, because obviously, for the first few years there, save for so it go like ups and downs is like key with Becky Lynch here. That's like, excuse me, the key words with Becky Lynch, because she showed up on the main roster, was kind of an afterthought at the beginning with Team PCB. She didn't really do anything. 2016 was like her breakout year. She had that great series of matches with Charlotte, not the one from 2018, but the matches with Charlotte from 2016. Earlier on that year, went for the women's title at WrestleMania. She had a great first few months of 2016. Was the first ever woman drafted to SmackDown, became the inaugural SmackDown Women's Champion soon after, and was champion pretty much until the end of the year. So 2016 was a great year for Becky Lynch. That kind of got her some superstardom. That really kind of solidified her as a star. 2017 sucked for Becky Lynch. She did not do anything. I really could not tell you what she did in 2017. I know she stayed on SmackDown. I don't even really remember. She feuded on and off with like Carmella and James Ellsworth, I think. She didn't really do anything in 2017. And obviously 2018, she didn't do anything for the first few months, but then, she turned heel. She went on a winning streak, turned heel, and then the rest is history. And in the last 8 months alone, this is what gives Becky Lynch an 8, because otherwise I don't know if she would be an 8. Yeah, she was the first SmackDown Women's Champion. Yeah, the first woman drafted to SmackDown in the draft back in 2016. But, she was treated like shit for a little while there in 2015, and again in all of 2017 was a complete waste of Becky Lynch. So for that alone, I don't know if I can give her an 8, but I can for this, because in the last, 8 months since SummerSlam, she's become a hotter star than any of the other 3 women, and that includes Charlotte. For as great as Charlotte is, for as successful as Charlotte has been, she has never felt as hotter of a star as Becky Lynch has since she went heel at SummerSlam, which has earned Becky Lynch the SmackDown Women's Championship for a time late last year, the main event of TLC, the Women's Royal Rumble match, the main event of WrestleMania, and now both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. So, for that reason alone, I gotta give Becky an 8. You could probably even go higher than that from an 8 to an 8.5, but I can't forget about the 2017 and 2015 periods of her career where she did nothing. But the last 8 months alone have definitely earned her the spot of being right behind Flair. She's not as successful yet, but in terms of popularity, and we have to see if it sticks too. As of right now, she's super hot, but will she still be hot in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months, in a year from now? Who knows? So as of right now, though, I would give her an 8. Behind her, I would give Sasha Banks a 7, which some people are like, oh, she's also been really successful. Well, why wouldn't you give her a higher number? Well, here's why. So she arrived with a lot of fanfare in 2015. She didn't do anything for a little while there. For the better part of that year, when she first got called up, Charlotte was really the focal point of that division. Sasha Banks, on the other hand, was a background player. She was a part of Team Bad for a cup of coffee, and Team Bad sucked. Her, Naomi, and Tamina, they had some entertaining segments. Largely, they were annoying, and not in a good way. It didn't work. 2016 was a lot like Becky Lynch, Sasha's breakout year as well. She turned face, which she has been since that point, at the onset of 2016, so hopefully she goes back to being a heel soon. Excuse me. So she turned face. She went for the women's title at WrestleMania in that great three-way, as I mentioned, with Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha. She got, stayed put on Raw in the WWE draft. She won the Raw Women's Championship on the first Raw of that new era of the, brand extension, whatever. Never has successfully defended the championship on pay-per-view, mind you, but she is a former 4-time Raw Women's Champion. And for all the arguments being made about how she hasn't been used as well as she should be, which I do agree with to an extent, she has held the belt 4 times. Granted, not for a long period of time. Each reign lasted no more than a month or two. Not even a month or two, like a month or a couple days. But she has won the title a few times. More than Dana Brooke has, that's for sure. And Dana Brooke sucks, obviously. But you know what I'm saying. Like, Bayley's only held it once. So that's still saying something. And she's moved enough merchandise, and I don't have exact figures in front of me, obviously, but you see the Sasha Banks merchandise everywhere. She sells a decent amount of merch. I think that much is obvious. That much is apparent. But, so she won the belt a few times in 2016, 2017, 2018, like I mentioned, was a total waste of her career. She did fucking nothing in 2018. Became one half of the inaugural WWE Women's Tag Team Champions a few months ago, and that was it. And she dropped the belt at WrestleMania, so she's not the star that she should be, but that's not to say that she's been buried by the company. She should be turned heel. They should have turned her heel years ago. Let's be honest. She's not a natural babyface. Maybe they keep her a face because she sells merchandise as a face, but that hasn't stopped them from turning other people heel in the past. So, and they have other, like Alexa Bliss sells a lot of merchandise and she's a heel. So I don't really think that matters too much in the long run, in my personal opinion. And it's worth experimenting with, at least at this point, now that she's been separated from Bayley in the Superstar shakeup. But, yeah, Banks has had enough success to go into the Hall of Fame one day. If fucking Tori Wilson can go into the Hall of Fame, so can Sasha Banks. Of course, that's not even really a debate. As a former 4-time Raw Women's Champion, main evented a pay-per-view, one half of the inaugural WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. That's pretty cool. But at the same time, she should feel a lot more important and a lot more special than she currently does. Those 2 years of her career from 2017 to 2018 were completely wasted. 2015, too. So for the 4 years that she's been on the main roster, she doesn't feel like as big of a star as Becky does currently or Charlotte ever has on the main roster. And then behind all 3 of them, I would put Bayley at 6. I would give her a 6 out of 10. Not exactly bad, but it's far from great. Bayley's had a good career in WWE. She won the Raw Women's Championship. It took a while, which it should have. It's not like she should have won the belt from the get-go like the rest of them. The real money in Bayley was the chase. And she won the title about, 6 months maybe after arriving on the main roster. About 6 months, I would say, after debuting in August. Didn't have the strongest start, but she won the belt. She had a decent reign. She successfully defended the championship at WrestleMania, so that was pretty cool. Dropped the belt. It was all kind of downhill from there. And they lost their way with Bayley. The whole "this is your life" bullshit, that was awful. The feud with Alexa Bliss was not good. And then they started that thing with Sasha Banks that also went nowhere. Except before finally winning the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. Which was cool, but it was short-lived and they dropped the belts after WrestleMania, at WrestleMania itself. So Bayley, again, for all the popularity and fanfare that she had in NXT, which again, that success does not always translate to the main roster. Not that it doesn't, but sometimes it just can't. The Vaudevillains were never going to be big stars. Yeah, they were over for a cup of coffee in NXT. That success was never going to translate to the main roster. Bo Dallas, the same can kind of be said for him. He was never going to be a big star in WWE. Bayley, on the other hand, I feel like she could have been. I think she still sells, or at least did at one point, a decent amount of merchandise, but she's not nearly as over as she should be. She got booed when she showed up on SmackDown on Tuesday, which goes to show what people think of her. And I like Bayley still. I'm not as big of a Bayley fan as I was a few years ago. But she has not had a bad career. She's not been buried. Like Emma had a pretty bad career. She did nothing in WWE. At least Bayley, she was the Raw Women's Champion, won at WrestleMania a few years ago, won the WWE Women's Tag Team titles with Sasha. She's had a few good matches with Sasha, with Charlotte, and a few others. So, by and large, the booking of Bayley's been pretty bad, but she's had a decent amount of success and is still a notable name despite not being as big of a star as she should be, which is why I gave her a 6. So that was a loaded question, but a question I like a lot, so sorry for spending so much time on that one for those of you listening for your questions. But Joe's second question, which trio had the better list of matches overall in 2018? The 205 Live group of Mustafa Ali, Buddy Murphy, and Cedric Alexander, or the NXT group of Johnny Gargano, Aleister Black, and Ricochet? That's a good question. I gotta go with the NXT group. Again, this is another great question that could very well go either way. But with this one, I gotta go with the NXT guys. The 205 Live guys, I've been watching 205 Live since the beginning. I never fell off, especially last year. I stuck with it. The show was great. Murphy and Ali had some fucking phenomenal matches. As did Murphy and Alexander. As did Cedric and Mustafa. But that being said, those were all like great matches, excellent matches even in some certain, cases. The NXT matches, Johnny Gargano's matches alone, those matches alone are better than anything that Ali, Murphy, and Alexander did in 2018. That's a fact. I mean, it's an opinion, but I think it's a fact. Gargano's matches alone with Tommaso Ciampa and with Aleister Black alone were better than anything those three guys did. Those matches were amazing. And then you throw in Aleister Black, who also had a fantastic year in 2018. The matches he had with Adam Cole, with Andrade Cien Almas, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa were phenomenal. You throw in Ricochet. He was a part of that 5-star North American title ladder match back at TakeOver New Orleans. He faced Adam Cole for the title at TakeOver Brooklyn 4. Fantastic match. He was a part of the War Games main event. Very good match. Great match with Velveteen Dream at TakeOver Chicago. So I got to go the NXT guys. I feel like that's the answer hands down. If you said the 205 Live guys, it's not a bad answer, but I feel like Gargano's matches alone. Gargano's match with fucking Andrade Cien Almas, like that match alone was outstanding. It was like the match of the year for WWE. So how could their matches not be better than, you said overall, but I feel like it's got to be the NXT guys. Your third question, the Warrior in me thinks they're probably all just going to float around in mid-card purgatory for a while, but personally, I feel in an ideal world, Mustafa Ali, Cedric Alexander, and Buddy Murphy can become 3 of the company's biggest stars on the main roster. How do you think the 3 of them will fare now that they're going to Raw and SmackDown? I don't know about that. I like Ali, Alexander, and Murphy. I don't know if they can be the 3 biggest stars in the company. They're 3 of the best wrestlers in WWE. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll be the 3 biggest stars in the company. When we have much bigger stars already in Roman, Rollins, Styles, and others. It's not that they're small, but Ali probably has the best future out of all of them. Buddy Murphy's excellent, but I just can't see any of these guys being world champion. Maybe Ali, like if he's in the Kofi position going into WrestleMania. Cedric I like a lot. He's just not world champion. I just do not see him being a world champion. I see him being maybe a mid-card or upper mid-card or at best. And I would love for him to prove me wrong. I just do not see him in that light. Neither do I see Buddy Murphy as a future world champion either. They're all great. I just do not see them as being like the cornerstones of the company. Excuse me, but they can be stars, though, in the mid-card, upper mid-card, lower main event scene, whatever. So how do I think they'll fare on Raw and SmackDown? Well, first of all, I like that Cedric and Buddy have been moved up. They did great work on 205 Live, but it was time to move them up. Buddy Murphy had done everything there is to do on 205 Live. Cedric did it like 5 times. He's been there since the beginning. So it was time for him to move up. He should have moved up a long time ago, but better late than never. With Cedric, I think he could do well. Being on Raw, he might get lost in the shuffle. But it's better than doing the same matches over and over and over on 205 Live. So I'm glad he moved up, but I'm kind of worried for him. Ali and Buddy have a better chance of success because they're on SmackDown. Ali's already off to a solid start. He's already proven that he can hang with the big boys. I think he's going to be okay. He's been okay. He's been the WWE champion before, Daniel Bryan. Buddy Murphy, we'll see. But I think he's going to be okay too. he can be a real player in the mid card scene. Him and Finn Balor can have some great matches over that IC title if they're allowed to. So I think all three guys are going to be okay in the long run. Cedric, though, is the one I really worry for. I feel like he might end up like a good wrestler, but like Apollo Crews, where he comes up with some buzz, but they don't really have a plan for him, so he just kind of flounders and ends up on main event every week. So I hope that's not the case, and Cedric does amount to something on Raw, but he's the one I really worry for because he's on Raw and the other two are on SmackDown. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, thoughts on Asuka and Kairi teaming up, and when do you see Asuka turning on Kairi? Asuka and Kairi teaming up, I feel like it's a great idea. I really do. I mean, I think a lot of us thought it would be Kairi moving up to the main roster, but with Io Shirai, I like this idea a lot for a number of reasons. One, it keeps Io Shirai in NXT for a little while longer. She just showed up a few months ago. I feel like she should be the one to beat Shayna Baszler for the title, and she wasn't pinned to TakeOver, so keeping Shirai in NXT is a smart move. So I like that. It gives Asuka something to do. She just lost the SmackDown Women's title. They've really been going up and down with their booking since she showed up on the main roster. So I like this. I like this tag team a lot. Gives Kairi something to do right from the get-go. And they have a mouthpiece in Paige. So that's 4 reasons right there why I think this team will work and why I like it a lot. So it's also a great addition to the women's tag team division. That's 5 reasons, really. That the tag team division, they have some talent there with the Iconics and Mandy Rose and Sonya, and that, I don't really care about Nia Jax and Tamina. But, yeah, so, I mean, you know, they have some talent there, but they need more blood. They need more fresh blood, and Asuka and Kairi provide that for them. With Asuka turning on Kairi, hopefully that happens down the road, if only for heel Asuka, which we have not seen since her NXT days, so maybe not anytime soon, obviously, but a heel Asuka and a face Kairi Sane, maybe even a feud over the SmackDown Women's Championship between a SmackDown Women's Championship feud between the two would be awesome. So, yeah, maybe not anytime soon, but a heel Asuka and a face Kairi Sane feud on the SmackDown brand, maybe over the title, would be amazing. Jeremy's second question: thoughts on Luke Harper leaving, SAnitY being split up, and Chad Gable going solo? Luke Harper leaving first doesn't surprise me. I really am not surprised. I saw that on Twitter. A few minutes after he posted it yesterday, I was in the car. I was like, you know. I love Luke Harper, don't get me wrong. I'm not like saying Luke Harper, but I'm like, is anyone really shocked? The guy has not been on TV since August. I think he's been cleared to wrestle for a while now. He partook in the Worlds Collide tournament. He probably had a pretty good idea, like, hey, I'm not going to be used. They're not going to push me. They're not going to even use me. They've never really utilized Harper in a singles capacity. He is a former IC champion. He has had some success on his own, but by and large, they don't really do anything with him on his own, and then they just pair him right back up with either Bray Wyatt or Eric Rowan or both. And it's been a recurring cycle now for 4 or 5 years. So at this point, he might as well leave, take his talents elsewhere. The fucking writing was on the wall. He's made it pretty apparent on Twitter in recent months that, hey, I'm not happy here. I'm ready to explore other endeavors, a lot like Ty Dillinger and Hideo Itami, and he was a bit more blunt about it, but I'm not surprised that Harper left, and I think he can be a good asset to whatever company he ends up in. But I'm glad he's leaving, because if they're not going to do anything with him, then why not leave? Why not announce your intentions to leave the company and go elsewhere? So I like that a lot, and he did it in the best way possible. Like, he didn't trash WWE, like, I wouldn't imagine he would do that while still with the company anyway, but I think he did it in a good professional manner, and hopefully we could see him either in AEW or Ring of Honor or just on the indie scene again. But yeah, Luke Harper leaving, not really a surprise, but a big loss for WWE, because not to say that the guy could have been a world champion, but really, he could have gone for the world title at WrestleMania 33. And don't tell me he couldn't have, because he had some fanfare early in 2017. It made sense for him to be a part of that match. The match sucked as it was without him in it, so he should have been in the Bray Wyatt-Randy Orton match at WrestleMania 33, but I digress. SAnitY splitting up, that was more of a surprise. I was shocked to see that, but it's not like they've done anything on the main roster. It's not the fact that they haven't done anything. It's the fact that why would you bother splitting them up? At least they're a tag team that you can use to, help out other people. It's one thing if one guy in the group says, hey, I want to leave, which might actually be the case. That might have been why they split them up. We don't know the story. Alexander Wolf went on Twitter yesterday saying, hey, goodbye to WWE. Thanks for 3X amount of great years, blah, blah, blah. SAnitY was awesome. We had a lot of success, whatever. And that's cool. But I guess he might be on his way out. He may have asked for his release, and WWE's like, okay, then we'll just split up SAnitY then by putting Eric Young on Raw. I thought that was really random. That's basically WWE saying, hey, we have no plans for Eric Young. We're just going to let him sit on Raw until we release him. Because they have no other use for him unless they make him a trainer or something at NXT, which might be a good spot for him. But beyond that, what more can they really do with the guy? Eric Young on his own does nothing for me. So I guess if he's being moved to Raw just to lose to fucking Tyler Breeze every week, that's fine, but I would not have split up SAnitY. If that was ultimately WWE's decision, and one of the three guys saying they want to leave or whatever had nothing to do with it, I thought that was dumb. Because they still could have been built back up. They've only been on the main roster for about a year. They've done nothing, mind you, but they had the opportunity to do something with them. And at least, they haven't done anything, but at least it's another tag team to have. Why split them up for no reason if there's no plans to use any of them? Eric Young's a loser. Wolf sucks. Dane's really the only one with any singles, promise, singles potential, a future in singles competition. So we'll see if they do anything with him, but if not, I thought that was a waste. And then finally, Chad Gable. I like the idea a lot, really, to break him off on his own, but it's not like we haven't seen this before. They broke up American Alpha a few years ago, and they had their chance then to do something with him. They didn't. He barely appeared on SmackDown until they paired him up with Shelton Benjamin a few months later, so that went nowhere. They break him apart from Shelton. They put him on Raw. Again, another opportunity to have him do something. I think he beat Jinder on Raw one week. Okay, cool start to his Raw run. Jinder beat him the very next week, and that was it. So that also went nowhere before they paired him up with Bobby Roode, another tag team. And then they're splitting these guys up, Roode and Gable, which I like, because Roode should be on his own, if anything. But does that really mean they're going to do anything with Gable? They've had two other opportunities before, and they didn't do anything with them. So if they didn't do anything then, what's so different now? So I'm hoping I'm wrong, and they do something with him going forward. But I'm not optimistic, to say the least. I like the move to SmackDown. I think there's more of a chance they might do something with him on the Blue brand compared to on Raw. But Dillinger, sat on the sidelines for months on SmackDown. So just because you're on SmackDown doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be pushed. So we'll see. I mean, it's really, I don't know. I think they've kind of given up on pushing Gable. I think they kind of see him as a perennial tag team wrestler. There's always a chance. Don't get me wrong. There's always a chance. If he works with Cruz more, and if he works with, Finn Balor over the IC title, I think that'd be really cool. But I'm not getting my hopes up. Not in the slightest. Just because we've seen this before with Gable. Twice, actually. And they did nothing with him either time. So I'm hoping SmackDown's different. But, again, he was on SmackDown 2 years ago, and they did nothing with him. So we'll see. I'm not overly optimistic, but it's an opportunity if nothing else. And also gets Bobby Roode on his own, which he should have been from the get-go. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine, his first question was, with Luke Harper and Alexander Wolf asking for their releases, and I don't know about Wolf asking for his release, I know that's speculation, I don't know if that's official or not, but I guess we'll find out soon. Will this trend continue with more frustrated wrestlers who just want to try and make it in another company? We've seen it not just with these two, but Dillinger, Hideo Itami, The Revival reportedly wanted to quit a few months ago. The Usos have since resigned. Dean Ambrose is leaving. Sasha Banks reportedly wants out. I'm not sure how true that is. But yeah, I could absolutely see this continuing with other people. Just because people end up on a different show doesn't really make much of a difference. Apollo Crews has been going back and forth for years now. If he doesn't really get what's coming to him on SmackDown, if he doesn't get pushed, at least utilized better. When I say pushed, I'm not saying future world champion. But at least utilized better, then why not just leave? Just why not go elsewhere? I know he has a family he has to support, but the guy, I don't know, he seemed to be making a decent living on the indies before he came to WWE, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess we'll find out in due time. But yeah, I could definitely see this continuing. I'm not sure exactly with who, but there's a lot of people. Shelton Benjamin, they're doing jack shit with, so why not just leave? He was fine without WWE. Why you'd be fine without WWE again? I think. Mickie James doing nothing with her. Why not just leave? So that's my 2 cents on that. His second question, did it seem like the SmackDown Women's Division got a lot better during the shakeup? It suddenly just feels fresher. It does. This is the strongest the SmackDown Women's Division has been in at least 2 or 3 years. At least. They have Kairi Sane, Asuka, technically Becky Lynch, Charlotte, Bayley, Ember Moon, Paige, who doesn't wrestle, but she's there. The Iconics, Mandy Rose, Sonya. They also brought over Mickey and Liv Morgan. So they have a very talented group of women there. The last couple years, SmackDown's women's division. Last year they had some star power. They had like Naomi, Asuka, Becky, and Charlotte, but they didn't really do anything. Carmella was like the lead heel on the show, and she was no good. And she beat Charlotte a few times. She beat Asuka a few times, which was shit. Didn't really start to heat up until Charlotte and Becky did their thing, and even then, they were the only relevant ones on the show. At least now they have a few different women they can build around. And for the first time since like the first draft in 2016, where they didn't have a lot of women on the show then either, but they seemed to make the most of who they had. So I'm hoping this division is a lot similar to that, and they start making the most of who they have, and utilize them for the stars that they are. Kairi Sane, Asuka, Becky, Charlotte, Bayley, Ember. There's a lot of talent there. So yeah, I like the women's division on SmackDown a lot. They can do a lot with the women that they have. Bayley wasn't doing anything on Raw for a long time. Ember Moon was barely on TV. So hopefully this means bigger and better things for those women on this show and just the SmackDown women's division on the whole. The next question, let's see, also from John Ritland. His third question was, is the Viking experience the worst name change WWE has done in at least the last 10 years? It's got to rank up there. It's a pretty bad name, like I said. It's a really, really bad name. A name change that was not necessary in the slightest. But they don't do too many name changes. They shorten names. It's very rare they change names. But this has got to be up there as one of the worst ones I've seen and heard. But yeah, it's pretty bad. At the Scarlet One from Twitter, thoughts on this infamous name change from Raw? Not the Viking experience, but it was a picture of Bobby Roode and Chad Gable while wearing their robes with a graphic underneath them that said, The Usos. Ouch. I actually did not see that. I saw a graphic like in the corner of the screen. So I looked up from like my phone or something and I saw a graphic leaving the screen, but I wasn't paying attention to the graphic. I was like, oh, look, it's Roode and Gable. I didn't see the graphic and what it said. So honestly, the Usos coming to Raw was not spoiled for me, surprisingly enough. But yeah, that was a pretty bad fuck up. At RJ_Marceau from the Twitter machine, with the move to Fox in October, why did SmackDown get slighted in the Superstar shakeup? Could you see them adding NXT talent as well as Brock Lesnar before the move? Yeah, I mean, they got slighted. Did they really get slighted, though? Like, between who they moved after the show and during the show, Joe could be leaving too, which is kind of a blow to the show. No, not intended to rhyme there. But that's just the way that it goes. Now, that was a rhyme on purpose. But, so they have Roman Reigns come over, which was a fair trade for AJ. Quality-wise, it may not be as good of a show as it was before, like last year, but they still have a pretty loaded roster. With Roman, they still have Randy. They have Finn Balor coming on over. They still have the Hardy Boys on that show. The New Day, The Bar, Nakamura, Rusev. Chad Gable got drafted. Kevin Owens is still there. Daniel Bryan, obviously. Kofi Kingston is part of the New Day. They have a pretty good roster over on SmackDown. We thought they got slighted in the first draft a few years ago, and like I said, they made the most of who they had, and it was the superior show by a long shot compared to Raw. So the fact that, I mean, yeah, maybe Raw got more people, but it's also 3 hours. And it's not like SmackDown didn't get NXT people either. They got Kairi Sane, so I would have split up Black and Ricochet. I would have put up one of them on SmackDown. I think SmackDown got fucked in that respect. I don't think Raw had to get both Black and Ricochet. But nonetheless, I do think that Lesnar on SmackDown could happen at some point. He wasn't going to move last night. The guy was not going to show up. They could have announced it, but I don't think they think that far in advance. I think they will keep Lesnar on Raw in the long term, but I could see them moving him to SmackDown. I thought they would move Ronda, but Ronda's also out hurt right now, so she wasn't moving with the hand surgery or whatever. They could have announced it, but again, it wouldn't have had the same impact. They switch people's shows all the time. people come back from injury on like on the opposite show. So I could see AOP coming back from injury on SmackDown. Honestly, I kind of expect it. Lesnar, the next time we see him, he could be on SmackDown. Ronda Rousey, the next time we see her, she could be on SmackDown for like in time for the Fox premiere in October. So, yeah, they got slighted maybe ever so slightly. I think Raw does have the better roster overall still, but SmackDown did not make out too badly. They still have a pretty star-studded roster, all things considered. Elias, too, I forgot to mention him. And Mustafa Ali, he's another great talent, so I'm looking forward to seeing how SmackDown makes the most of who they have again, and hopefully goes back to being a great show again coming out of WrestleMania. And the final question for the day, at Cap'n Keller from _29, or at Cap'n Keller _29, excuse me. His question was, what opponents would you be most excited to see Finn Balor face now that he's moved to SmackDown? Buddy Murphy versus Balor is personally intriguing to me. I agree. Balor and Buddy would be a great match, I think. Not a match I know that I wanted, and not a match I knew that I wanted until you just said it right there. So I think Buddy and Balor would be a great match. A number of other opponents, too, I wrote down here. Daniel Bryan, I think, is an easy one. I don't think we've ever seen Balor and Bryan before, even on the independent scene. So Balor and Bryan would be pretty damn cool. Balor and Apollo Crews, I think we've seen before. Not on the main roster, but back in NXT a few years ago. And they had a good match. If given the opportunity to shine, Crews is great. So I would love to see him get some more chances to shine on SmackDown in a feud or a series of matches with Finn Balor. Chad Gable is another one. I don't know if we ever saw Balor and Gable in NXT, but that'd be another really, really fun match. Kevin Owens, Balor and Owens, I don't think have ever faced off, have faced off one-on-one since their NXT days. So, which 4 years ago at this point. So, I would love to see them rekindle that rivalry at some point on SmackDown. Balor and Orton is an obvious one for me. Balor and Orton, we've never seen before. So that'd be pretty cool to see at some point. And Finn Balor and Nakamura, too. We have not seen that match. The only time we ever saw that match was in NXT a few years ago, and we have not seen it since. I think they clashed in, like, the Survivor Series Raw and SmackDown match a few years ago, but, like, I'm talking one-on-one. So, yeah, Balor versus Buddy, Bryan, Crews, Gable, Orton, Owens, Nakamura would all be great matches, I think. And that does it for episode 281, guys, of #AskGSM here today for April 17th, 2019. Again, I apologize for my congested voice, all the coughing. I had to stop. I coughed even more than that, and I had to stop the show several times. So thank you for bearing with me. I'm hoping to be back at 100% next week. I was sick a couple months ago, too, and I never get sick. I live with people that get sick all the fucking time. So hopefully I can be back on the mend. I can be back to 100% in the next couple days. Top 100%. That's a bad pun. But anyway, guys, if you want to send in questions to the show, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. You can find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So try not to get sick like me. Hopefully don't get sick just listening to this. Allergies are in the air. I don't have allergies. I just, again, come in contact with too many sick people far more often than I should. But nonetheless, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great Easter on Sunday. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.